Nick, super stoked to have you on the Market to Find show. It's great to meet you finally.
Great to meet you. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, I wanted to press record because I love, um, I like having conversations, and I want to interview you about your book and everything. But I would consider this more of a conversation than an interview. So back to
Sure.
your question, like, state it again about buds.
So I was just asking, is there consensus amongst people in terms of what's the most challenging part of SEAL training at
SEAL training.
BUDS? Um, or is there a variance because some people maybe were national swimmers and some people
Yeah,
were football players or whatever, and so different people experience things to be easier or more
yeah.
challenging based off of their background?
Well, it's pretty. There are several kind of issues, and as far as the consensus of what the hardest thing is of buds, I would say there probably is, and it's Hell Week. And so that's a pretty well known part of buds. Hell Week is this 1 week of training that's nonstop. I mean, it's very distinct from all the rest of the training. The rest of the training, you're trying to train for, you know, tactical skills, strategic skills, leadership, team type skills, operational skills, in the water and on land and the air, right? And 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 you're doing it over a long period of time, and you're doing it in kind of a crawl, walk, run fashion with increasing competency until you're still a beginner at the end of buds, because it's why it's called basic, but you're pretty
Mhm.
damn deadly. And then right at week like 4 or 5 in the early days, they have this 7-day period where you train around the clock nonstop. And so that is not training any unique skills. It's training your ability to endure, right? The hardest, most extreme environment that you could put a human being into besides combat. So most people say that would be the hardest part of SEAL training, and honestly, that's where most people leave, right? So you might have, like, use my class as an example. We had 185 start on day one. Our Hell Week was week 7. By the time we started Hell Week, we were down to like 85 or 90, and then at the end of Hell Week, we were down to 40. But making this transition from like just talking about SEALs and teams and toughness, I would like to get a little bit into the weeds on your experience of high frequency trading. Like, 'cause I don't
Yep.
have any experience there, and I think it's fascinating. And I've heard a little bit about that quant world, but what is it like? I mean, you said it's very hard work, and
I,
I
you
don't,
know,
I don't
like
see, it doesn't seem hard work if you're just staring at a computer, and it's just collecting pennies.
well, it's complicated. So it definitely took me oh, it was a lot of work to kind of ramp up and really become an expert at that space, right? Because you have to understand the math, the computer science, you have to understand how the markets work. You have to
Right,
know, in that space, like I'm not researching companies to know what the earnings report of
right,
company ABC is going to be. I'm literally know nothing about these companies. Managing billions of dollars off of the balance sheet of a large investment bank where I'm in the internal hedge fund. And, they basically given us open mandate, do whatever, you have risk limits and, some expectations. But other than
right.
that, it's figure out a way to make money, use
Now,
some
were you
math.
just competing against math, or were you competing against others who are trying to trade the same stocks really fast? Or what's your competition?
Well,
Describe the process.
nowadays, like 90 over 90% of all trades happening on a stock exchange is bots and algorithms, right? So now,
Really? Wow.
yeah. So most of, but back then, I'm talking. I was doing this 2007 to end of 14. So, and I was doing it in Asia for the first period of my career. So back then, I was one of the only. It wasn't as popular, at least in Asia, right?
Mhm,
So the percentage of people I'm trading against were probably more retail.
mhm.
Um, but yeah, so you basically in high frequency trading, I'm developing algorithms, creating math formulas, coding computers to automatically trade stocks based off of the algorithms that I built, and I'm trying to capture fractions of a penny. But I would trade billions and billions of dollars, and we're looking at micro and nanosecond speeds. So we're having conversations about should we invest X million dollars to have a microwave line from New York to Chicago instead of you know uh, fiber optic or some of the other different ways that you can send orders. And sometimes you're talking about millions of dollars to save microseconds, right? And
Interesting.
so that was fun. I did that for about 8 years, had a successful career. made more money in my mid 20s than I ever thought I would. But then ultimately, I got into startups because I had an idea for a startup and didn't want to have any regrets. So by 30, I retired from high frequency trading, got into the startup world, totally underestimated how difficult it would be
Right.
to run a
Right.
team in a company.
Before we dig into this, Nick, what did you
Yep.
learn as a quant trader about life and about leadership?
So about leadership, ultimately I decided to leave a large part because I didn't jive well with my team in the US.
Okay.
They It was a French bank. They were speaking French most of the day on the desk. There were some people, there's a lot of ego involved. And so it
Mm-hmm.
wasn't as collaborative. And ultimately I think it impacted our performance. And I didn't believe in the direction that my boss was taking the team.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, fast forward um, a few years after I left, the team dissolved
Mm.
because it wasn't working.
Right.
Not to say, oh, I told you so, I was so right. But, I didn't see a kind of a long-term, a long-term play there where I saw a successful path for them.
Mm-hmm.
Versus in Asia, when I was doing it, there was a lot more cohesion on a team level.
Right.
So,
That whole
but
culture is a we culture, right? So I can see how they're doing it for the team and the mission.
well,
Less
yeah,
individuality.
there's a lot that goes into it. To do high frequency trading, you need to have good research, good models, good systems, good algorithms, and it's really complicated. It takes you want to share learnings and research amongst the team in a very collaborative way
Mm-hmm.
because if something's helping me trade the Australian stock market, you know, maybe there's some learning there that you can adapt and tweak that would be helpful to you in Korea or Europe or somewhere,
Mm-hmm.
So,
Right.
um, so ultimately, that the team aspect was a huge factor with why I decided to step away.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
I have a question: is AI replacing humans
in
for
trading,
this type of in trading?
yeah, I mean everything that I was doing was using machine learning and advanced math, right? So, um, yeah, I think we're already there with that.
God, that's kind of terrifying. And you think about an AI that develops like a master algorithm that's actually like radically successful starts to
Well,
become a billionaire and then a trillionaire. I know it's not the
maybe.
there's the owner of the
Well,
AI, but is there a way for like a breakout AI to corner a market?
you have like AI against AI. Like
Right.
the
Yeah.
the beauty of bots is they're never going to complain, get sick, or ask for a raise. So I mean, it's pretty good.
That's wild.
So I don't know. We'll see what happens with that. But other things though that I did learn is I look at risk and I look at two things I think would be helpful to listeners. One, I look at risk in a unique way. When most people are just thinking about, how do you make money, or hey, if I put in $1, I'll make two, but they're not thinking about all the different levels of risk. And in high frequency trading or any trading, it's not just about reward, but it's reward relative to risk. We call it a
Right.
Sharpe ratio. If you went to Vegas and won $100 million, but it's because you bet it all on black and you got lucky, doesn't necessarily mean that you're super smart. You got lucky, right? And if you play that game 100 times, your P&L is going to look like a jagged line.
Right.
Versus, I would much rather make $10 million, but every day, you're making like 30 grand consistently. You
Right.
know, so it's just like a straight line. So, um, it's all about reward relative to risk, and I think even in business and your team, people are not thinking about blind spots. If all your payments are coming in through one payment processor, what happens if that one shuts you off? If all of your leads coming from Facebook ads, what happens if Facebook changes their algorithm? If only one person knows how to do payroll and that person quits, what are you going to do if it's not documented? So I think that my background in high frequency trained me to look at risk in a unique lens
Mm-hmm.
that, in certain ways helped me to develop my framework and content that now I'm focused on.
Right.
And I would also say in that space, literally microseconds can mean millions. So I also celebrate the small wins. A lot of
Right.
people are just trying to, make some massive, how do I save 10 hours a week in one shot versus
Right.
I might say, look, I'll show you a way to save 2 seconds by
Right.
like some shortcut. But you're a team, but that 2 seconds, if you do it 60 times a day, that's 2 minutes a day. That's 10 minutes a week. That's 40 minutes a month, right?
Mm-hmm.
At the end
Sure.
of
Yeah.
at the end of the year, no, you're talking 5 to 10 hours a year, and like if you have a team of 10, it starts adding up in meaningful ways, and maybe I can find you 1,000 2-second wins
Right.
like that, right? And so, looking at things from a microscope like that also gives you a unique vantage point to see things.
That's cool. So you pivoted to entrepreneurship. I know that certainly had its challenges in terms of leadership capacity and trying to work together as a team to get a common vision mission done there. Let's talk about that, and then I really want to get into your book and operational
Sure.
efficiency for the listeners. Like, how can we really bring some of this stuff to life for them?
Yeah, sure. So, where do you want me to start?
Start out with the the entrepreneurial kind of journey. Like, what was that like to go from being a quant trader where your environment was fairly certain to being a
Okay.
complete, in a complete VUCA shitstorm, starting a
Yeah,
business and having to pivot constantly? Because I've been there several times, and as
it
and
was tough,
anyone who's
man.
thinking about being an entrepreneur, it's a tough journey. Yeah.
It was tough. So, um, I launched originally my company Leverage was a freelancer marketplace. So I've always been obsessed about productivity and saving time. So and I think I probably developed this from a younger age, but even like as a high frequency trader, it just really reinstilled the value of time because a microsecond could mean millions.
Right.
And so in the early days, we were doing tasks and projects for people. We were a freelancer marketplace. We scaled very quickly to 7 figures in the first year, 150 people remote. We made a ton of mistakes though along the way. And we had, you know, $750,000 of debt, $500,000 of losses each year. And we had an org chart where it was just the two of us with 150 people underneath us, which, isn't probably the optimal way of having some type of hierarchy. And so he was in charge of people and I was in charge of not people. That was how we split it up. So
Love it.
so
So
so literally out of 150 people, maybe 5 knew who I was, and then we had about 500 clients. None of them knew who I was. And so we had all this superficial success. People really thought that we had our stuff together. And then one day we're working at a coffee shop and he taps me on the shoulder and he tells me he's out. Not in
wow.
two not in 2 weeks, not in 2 days. He's out in 2 minutes. And so I go white, I'm sweating, I'm thinking this can't be real. And in the 3 months after that, we lose 40% of our revenue. I'm cashing out my 401k. My dad's taking a second mortgage on his house to loan us money for payroll. Bank accounts are getting frozen. I mean, it was a complete clown circus.
Wow.
And I had to make a choice. Do I bankrupt the company, which everyone suggested, or do I try to turn it around? And one, I didn't think it was ethical to screw people out of their credits that they had purchased. We owed about $750,000. And then two, I did see a path to turning things around. And so I
Mhm.
decided to stick it out. It was really painful. And I I did start making things more efficient and
Mhm.
simplifying the business and making things more streamlined. And it
Mhm.
seemed to work. And the stuff that was working for me, simultaneously, people started reaching out to me asking me to help them with their operations.
Mhm.
And, I worked with Tony Robbins. I worked with Poopery. I got to work with small 2-person gas and water leak detection companies. And
Mhm.
all the stuff that was helping Leverage really re-navigate the ship was equally helpful for a 2-person gas and water leak detection company or like literally a Fortune 10 tech company. And so
Wow.
ultimately, over time, I started realizing like, hey, this stuff is super impactful. There's all these tools available now. There's Slack, there's Asana, there's Microsoft Teams. It's not just text and Gmail anymore. And people just had no education around how to use these tools, when to use these tools, and it can completely transform the productivity of your organization and team if you
Right.
take advantage of them. And so And it's not their fault. These tools are like less than 10 years old. So work has changed. And it's kind of like what's going on is people are still using a typewriter basically when you could get a new M2 chip in a MacBook Pro and you're
Right.
trying to get stuff done on a typewriter. It's just suboptimal. So
That's cool.
we just started seeing tremendous results. We're saving like a full business day a week per employee in these companies by teaching them best practices, not just how to use the tools, but when to use these tools. What problems do these tools solve? In this scenario, you should use this.
Right.
Um, right. And I'm guessing, in Navy, I'm sure in SEAL training, it's like if this happens, you
Right.
probably want to use a gun. If this happens, you want to use something else. So it's the
Right.
same thing. It's just like your tools and
In a way,
SEALs are weapons.
it's just an algorithm, right? If then, if
Yeah.
this, then that.
So
Right.
that's what my book is. It's basically an algorithm for how you should work effectively. And I'm not telling people you must use Slack, you must use Asana. I wanted to create, Mark, a timeless book that's going to be the go-to manual for how to run a high-performing team. And I'm not saying you need this tool or this tool. It's more theoretical. Like these are the types of tools you need. This is when and how you use them to maximize not just your productivity, but the productivity of the team. And my goal with this book is how can I save millions of hours of completely wasted time that people are
Right.
suffering through right now? Stuff that doesn't give them joy, doesn't tap into their unique ability.
Yeah.
Right now, when I look at teams, they're suffering on this issue of a scavenger hunt where things are just fragmented all over the place. Did Mark text me? Was that in a group text? Was that in an email? Was that in a Slack
Yeah.
DM or a Slack channel? And everyone's got their own idea of where to put something. And usually it's whatever was quickest in the moment for that person. And
Right.
so you got all these people optimizing for them as an individual. And in math, it's like we call this a local optimization versus a global optimization.
Hmm.
And so, how do you get your team thinking in terms of global optimization, which means, hey, you might have to sacrifice 30 seconds or 10 seconds and put things in a well-structured place that's easy to find so that your
Hmm.
colleague doesn't have to go on a scavenger hunt and spend an hour looking for it,
Right.
And when everyone makes that mutual agreement, that's really where we see exponential time savings. And
Right.
so the underlying principle of what we do at Leverage when we work with companies or my book, it's shifting the mindset of optimizing for transferring information fast
Right.
to optimizing for retrieving information fast, which means you take pause and you put things in the right drawer where it belongs.
Hmm.
So, when you do your laundry, the fastest way to be done is you take it out of the dryer and you stick it in one drawer. Most
Hmm.
people don't do that. You take the time to separate your socks in one drawer, your underwear in another drawer, not because it's the fastest way to be done with laundry, but tomorrow when you have to put an outfit together, you can retrieve what you need to and it's faster. And it's the same in business. You got different drawers.
Hmm.
Align with your team on what type of thing goes into what type of drawer. And that's where we see not just a business day back a week and more time to spend on high level stuff, but an increase in culture, right? An increase of as a byproduct of an increase in trust. I see often people don't trust each other, not because they don't think that they're ethical or that they'll steal, but because they don't trust that if you ask someone to do something, they have a system to monitor, track, and be held accountable to those things. And they don't trust that it's going to actually get done. So then
Right.
that causes stress and, constant chasing and texting and unnecessary stress. Work's already hard enough. You don't need to make it any harder.
Yeah, totally. What what's the CPR framework? So let's talk about the framework for, how to think about this stuff, and then I'd love to really dig into some of the most impactful tools or processes, for efficiency.
CPR is what I found. It doesn't matter if you're a coach, financial advisor, or poop spray company. The three drawers that every business and every team needs is CP&R. Stands for communicate. So every team in the world, you need to communicate internally with your team, externally with clients. Communication is like the oxygen of your business. If you can't communicate with people, I
Right.
guess I was never in the military, but I would imagine that a key strategy in war is how do you cut off the enemy's communication systems? It's
For
going to make
sure.
it hard for them to fight, right? So,
Right.
same thing. If you're not communicating as a team properly, everything slows down.
Hmm.
So, there's different tools in the communication bucket, and it's important to be aware of what should go into a communication tool versus into a planning tool, which is the P, right?
Mm-hmm.
If you were to go camping in the forest with your team, you would need walkie-talkies to communicate with each other, but you would also need a map to navigate out of the
Right.
forest. Most people are using text and email, which are the walkie-talkies. They're trying to hack it to be a map. So for example, if I were to say, hey Mark, could you edit this podcast by Friday, right?
Mm-hmm.
And we're on the same team. That shouldn't be that shouldn't be done in text, Slack, Microsoft Teams, email. That is a task that I need to hold someone accountable to. I need to be able to click a button and know what are all the things that I had requested to get done. Did they get done? What's past due? What's the status of this thing? You can hack it in a communication tool, but if you want to hold someone accountable to something, that should be done in a work management tool, which is the P,
Mm-hmm.
right? Communication really should be things like, hey, welcome Nick to the team. Or,
Mm-hmm.
hey, does anyone have any idea what time we're meeting at this time? Like those are communication things. But, we're trying to roll out a new website for my book.
Mm-hmm.
That would be so inefficient if we were just texting and emailing about that. That's a project. We need milestones. We need tasks. Different people should be responsible for different parts of that. There should be different due dates on some of those things. So
Right.
in one place, we should be able to just see kind of the state of affairs, what's going on, and we should be
Mm-hmm.
able to collaborate effectively. And so it's important to understand what's communication versus what's planning. And then the R is resources. So every company, you have you have IP, you have knowledge, you have standard operating procedures, right? So how you onboard a new client, how you do payroll, what your core values are. All of this is knowledge that needs to be documented somewhere so that one, you don't waste time repeating yourself and people could just go and self-serve. But two, back to my point before about risk, you don't want to be sitting on risk that only one person knows how to do payroll and they decide to leave tomorrow. What are you going to do?
Mm-hmm.
So it's not just about moving faster forward. It's about how do you avoid the setbacks? And
Right.
so documenting knowledge both helps you avoid setbacks, but also it helps you be more efficient because you don't have to repeat yourself.
Right. Awesome. So communication planning and resources, starting with communication, is there a top tool or process and tool that has led to like the most time saving or most efficiency
So
gain?
I would say most people should start. The most popular thing that we're doing at Leverage right now is we do training on how to use email properly, Gmail
Right.
and Outlook, and how to get to inbox zero.
Yeah.
Um,
Explain what inbox zero is. By the way,
inbox,
I'm inbox zero person. Literally, not only my inbox but my trash folder, because Gmail is so goony that you know a lot of important email goes into my trash folder. So I'm an inbox zero for both my inbox and my trash folder. Isn't that weird? Strange. I thought I was
well,
a strange guy, but it's good to hear you say that's the
no,
best
I
practice.
mean inbox zero. Basically, email is just a to-do list that other people can add to, and
That's
just
right.
like any to-do list that you want to, tick things off. You want to get end the day not with, and we don't care if you have unread or read. For me, it doesn't matter. You have your inbox, which is kind of your to-do list.
Mm-hmm.
And then you have strategies. You have an archive, which you can still find in your all mail, and you
Mm-hmm.
can snooze emails. But email, not every company listening here, not every team maybe is using Microsoft Teams or Slack or Asana or
Mm-hmm.
these tools, but everyone, you are using email.
Right.
And you're probably able to save 3 to 5 hours a week if you learn how to use it effectively.
Mm-hmm.
And so inbox zero is just a methodology to get your email under control, both so you don't waste time, but also so you don't miss opportunities. There's
Right.
so many people when we're dealing with them, they find, oh my God, I can't believe I missed this. This is worth $100,000 to me, this email,
Mm-hmm.
you know? So it's a way to get a grip on your email, save time, and it's usually the best starting point. But
Mm-hmm.
if you're not using tools like Microsoft Teams or Slack for internal communication, you're missing a big opportunity.
Mm-hmm.
If you think about email, one, just separating out email is for external, Slack and Teams is for internal. It's
Right. I
already
like
really
that.
helpful because then already, if I'm looking for something that Aiden told me, I know that the most logical tool to look in is Slack. I don't have to look with equal probability in text, email, Slack, Asana. So already just knowing that the highest probability of tool that information lives is here, you're already simplifying the problem by an order of magnitude.
Mm-hmm.
Now, where some of these other tools like Slack and Teams starts becoming really interesting is email is ordered. The logic is chronological. So the most recent email is at the top. That's it.
Mm-hmm.
These other tools, you have advanced functionality that's more optimized for what a team needs. For
Mm-hmm.
example, it's organized by topic. So you can create channels. You could have a podcast channel. You could have a channel for a private coaching group. You could have another channel for, you know, uh, new hires or all team.
Right.
And, you can write messages in those channels. And that's, if you're looking for, where was a conversation about the podcast, go to the podcast channel. It's probably the most logical place, right? So you can organize by topic versus organizing by chronological, and that's a subtle but distinct difference. Plus, it has third-party integrations and other kind of cool features that makes it really, really productive.
That's really interesting. And I can see how those. I love that distinction of use email for external comms and Slack for internal. We use both, and we don't have that distinction though. That just kind of set a light bulb off. I think a lot of
Yeah.
people.
Well, the best way to get to inbox zero is email zero. So all the stuff that's currently going into email that shouldn't go into email. So anything that really is internal communication, put it in Slack or Teams.
Right.
Anything that is related to tasks or projects
Right.
should go in a work management tool. And
Right.
so that alone is going to help reduce the amount of email by an order of magnitude. And
Right.
then we have a system called RAD, reply archive defer. And then once you start, once you kind of reduce the volume of email because you got it going to the right places, and then you follow this RAD system, you can get through email so much quicker, so much
Right.
less stress, and miss far less opportunities.
Right. Have you heard of the hub and spoke concept? With
Are you talking about like in how you like a flat organization versus like a
no,
hierarchical organization?
with the technology stack. So the idea is like with Teams or Zoom, and even Slack, you can use that as like your primary platform, and then through these apps and these add-ons and these plugins, you
Ah,
basically plug in everything. Like for instance, if you, let's say Zoom, you use a lot of Zoom. Now they've set that up where now you can use that as your hub, and then you can plug in, right, Slack to that, and you can plug in
yeah,
your
yeah.
email app, and you can plug in, some sort of repository like Asana. And so
Yep.
then you're not switching back and forth between all these apps. You just use that kind of hub app and you do all your work from there. Is that effective, or is that just a theoretical concept I learned in my doctorate program? Because
What did
we've
you
tried to
do it?
implement it and we still bounce around and it hasn't been very effective for us.
So I call it my command center. So it's funny that
Okay.
you're calling it. So I make Slack my command center.
Okay. Good.
Now,
Same
what I
idea.
do, yeah, same idea. Now, look, there's no avoiding CPR, communication planning resources are foundational stuff to your business. So there's no getting around needing to log in to a handful, call it 5 or so tools, and going in directly to those tools because these are such foundational elements to collaborating efficiently with your team.
Hmm.
Um, and so, some people are like, "Oh man, that's inefficient. I just want to use text and email," and they use that like a Swiss Army knife. But they're kind of biting off their nose to spite their face because it's like, what would you rather do to chop down a tree? Use a Swiss Army knife or a chainsaw? Yeah, yes, a chainsaw is a new tool, but it's going to chop it down faster. So you don't want to have 100 tools, but you definitely want to have a few core tools for CP&R.
Hmm.
Now, how I use Slack for the command center part of this is we have channels like we use HubSpot for a CRM. So I have a notification channel for HubSpot. So anytime like a new deal is closed, for example, I get notified in that channel.
Hmm.
Anytime a big invoice is paid, we have a Stripe integration. So we get notified in a payment channel because it's connected to Stripe. So I use it like a command center. So I don't need to be logging into hundreds of tools all the same time to get information. I use it more to get information automatically that I'm interested in.
Mm-hmm.
right? But I'm not using those integrations to do core workflows, right?
Mm-hmm.
So you can get around things and like, use an integration of Slack and Asana and do stuff in Asana, but via Slack. I tend to not advise that just because you should just have Asana is such a core tool. Like if for work management, you might be using another tool, but it's such a core piece of what you do day in, day out. You probably are going to be spending hours a day in that type of tool. So you shouldn't be accessing it via a third party hacked solution. You should directly go into that tool. So I really
Mm-hmm.
recommend this hub and spoke, as you're calling it, more for notification optimization versus
Mm-hmm.
actual dealing within those tools. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. You know, we all know that we waste a lot of time on meetings. So what are some, how do we make our meetings more efficient and save time, for group communication?
Yeah.
I mean, we have to all get together and collab.
Yeah. Um, Well, meetings are one of the biggest costs in companies. I think it was like over
Yeah.
$30 billion last year was wasted in inefficient meetings. I read
Mm-hmm.
some articles about it. And to optimize meetings, it doesn't really require any new technologies right now. It's more of a
Mm-hmm.
mindset shift.
Mm-hmm.
So there's a handful of things you should be thinking about with every meeting. One, does it need to have as many people?
Mm-hmm.
Right? Every person comes with an hourly rate, right? If you're on a 4-person 1 hour call, everyone's hourly rate's $100 an hour. That's a $400 call, right? You
Mm-hmm.
get it down to 3, now it just moved it to a $300 call. Next, does the meeting need to be as long as it is, right?
Mm-hmm.
Can you cut it down from an hour to 45 minutes, right? That's
Right.
still a huge win because even if you keep those same 4 people, you cut it down by 15 minutes, you just saved $100. It's still back from 400 to 300.
Right.
And it's important to understand too that time isn't linear. Not all time is created equal. So a lot of what we're talking about and a lot of what I talk about in the book is a framework and tactics and strategy how to save time, but it's also about optimizing time,
Right.
right? So like when when people think about their hourly rate, they just think every time block on the calendar is $100. So it's like all the same color. $100 at 9 a.m. on a Monday, $100 at 7 o'clock on a Friday.
Mm-hmm.
But in reality, they're not all worth the same, right?
Mm-hmm.
For me, after a relaxing weekend, 9 a.m. on a Monday, after I've worked out in the morning, had a cup of coffee, meditated, journaled, whatever you want to do, my brain's firing at full horsepower at that
Mm-hmm.
point.
Mm-hmm.
So that might be $1,000 an hour time slot
Mm-hmm.
versus 7 o'clock on a Friday after 100 Zoom calls for the week. And I'm exhausted and I'm in the back of an Uber and I don't have my laptop. My time isn't worth as much.
Right.
I can't, my brain's not at the same horsepower. I don't have the same tools with me to get the same amount of stuff done. So maybe it's worth $15 an hour, whatever,
Right.
right?
Mm-hmm.
So think about that. Be aware of where you predict your energy levels to be at and try to optimize your calendar around that. If you're having hour-long meetings and 15 minutes of that meeting is a report out, someone's just sharing with you numbers from something, do you have an opportunity to have them asynchronously videotape themselves talking about it, sending it to you in advance? And now when you're in the back of the Uber or you're going on a walk, you can watch that video to hear what's on their mind. And now you just freed up 15 minutes at the most
Right.
valuable time slot on the whole calendar. You
Right.
know, doing
That's
that one
brilliant.
time isn't going to change your business. But if you think about that for every single meeting and you think about the number of meetings you have,
Mm-hmm.
that can save you millions of dollars.
That's pretty cool. So, kind of extending this concept of being more efficient with how you manage meetings. What about what is your like hack for organizing your day most effectively so that you can have the brain power to do the deep work you need to do, can get your meetings in, have time for whatever else you need to do. Like what's I know there's probably different methods and it might be a matter of preference, but is there kind of a best practice that's evolved in your work?
I mean, now this starts moving more into the personal productivity space, and I
Right.
could just share with you kind of what I do. But I think there's a few things. One, you want to limit distractions. So with all of these tools we're talking about, most people have the wrong notification settings on, and so if you ever read Cal Newport's book Deep Work,
For
it's like
sure.
17 minutes to get back into a flow state when you're out. So you
Mhm.
want to minimize distractions, and not every time someone has an idea, you get a pop up and now you're out of kind of the deep thought.
Right.
So look at your notifications. Two, back to meetings, you want to use agendas for meetings, because every time someone has an idea, even if you don't have the notification pop-ups, you don't want to just be bombarded with a million messages every day.
Right.
So your brain's for having ideas, not holding ideas. You need to have systems and drawers to put things so that you don't have to walk around
Mhm.
stressed out punching onto it.
Mhm.
And so an agenda is a great strategy where you could tell your team, look, if it's not urgent and it can wait till next week, don't distract me. Add it to the agenda. We'll cover it live next week.
Right.
Yeah. Things that I do, I try to not have calls on Fridays in general. That way, if I have for myself non-time sensitive urgent things, I can snooze. So back to that RAD system with email, it stands for reply, archive, and defer. I
Mhm.
do most of my deferring to Fridays because that's my day with the most flexibility of not having pre-committed times right
Right.
on the calendar.
Mm.
So I like to personally try to theme my days. So
Mm.
Friday might be a no call day, and it's more of like an admin buffer day. Monday is like a team call where it's just back to back on team. Also, that allows me to, you know, optimize my travel schedule. I know that it's pretty disruptive if I fly on a Monday because I'm just back to back all day. So I'll try to avoid that and I'll fly on a Sunday,
Right.
But I know that Friday is a pretty good day to fly because I typically don't have calls, right?
Mhm.
I try to also predict the horsepower of my brain. So I know that I'm more of a morning person. I like to work out in the mornings. So I know that what I could probably get done on a fresh brain from, morning till say 11 or 12, I probably can accomplish more during that time period than from like noon to 8 o'clock. So I'll try to stack my most important stuff there. I'll try
Right.
to put a buffer in between calls because oftentimes if you're too overly scheduled, you don't have time to really digest what just happened, take notes, action items, etc. And you find that you just invested all this time on calls, but if you don't capture the action items or the proper notes, you might only be getting a fraction of the value of that investment of time that you just put into it. So
Right.
putting a little bit of a buffer. And then using these tools right, frankly.
Right. Right.
Like we eat our own dog food with this stuff.
Right.
And you have to use the tools properly. You make my team is probably getting the equivalent done of a team 3 times the size, just because we've removed all the friction and hurdles and setbacks that a lot of people waste time on.
Right. Right. I'll go back to your themes. I think that's such a brilliant idea, and I don't know if other people are like this, but I've tried to do that in the past, and then it becomes OBE, overcome by events, and then I'm back to where things are just getting slammed in my schedule wherever. So, first off, I'd love to hear what the rest of your theme days are, and secondly, how do you protect that? How do you protect it
It's
from other people
it's it's
overwhelming
tough.
your schedule?
So another trick that I do, there's it's tough, right? Because sometimes you have to start saying no to things that are important, and you have to swallow a tough pill.
Right.
Um, so I use HubSpot as a CRM. It has built-in scheduling. If you don't have a tool like that, there's tools like Calendly, which are popular to get
Mm-hmm.
scheduling links. So what you could do right now is sign up for one of those tools, and it syncs with your calendar, and then you could start blocking off. I only want to do calls Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday from this time to
Mm-hmm.
this time,
Mm-hmm.
right? And you could create different versions. So you could have like a VIP version. Like if it's really important, I'm available Monday through Friday, 8 to 8 for really important people, or nine
Mm-hmm.
to five, whatever you want. But for a regular call, I'm only available from noon to or from noon to 5 Tuesday through Thursday. So you could have
Mm-hmm.
two or multiple, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then each of those views is a unique link. And I talk about this in my book, but then you could buy domains. You could have like chatwithmark.com, for example.
Hmm.
or talktomark.com. And then you could set up domain name forwarding to that scheduling link. So then when you're meeting with people, you don't have to remember, oh, go to calendly.com/u/317.
Right.
You
Right.
know what
Right.
I mean? You just make it nice and easy. So that's a little productivity trick. And then for the other one, for the VIP one, you could do vip.chatwithmark.com, for example.
Right.
Right. And so based off of the context of your conversation or your text or your email, you could start giving dynamic kind of custom vanity URLs to people. You could also do it with Zoom. You could buy, zoomwithmark.com that points to your personal Zoom link so that it's just a bit quicker. But, that I digressed for a second, but using
No, this is all
async.
fascinating to me because where my mind is going is like, I'm not really a tech geek, and I got a lot of things going on, and so I never really sit down, even though I think things like this are a really good idea. Like, I'm not the guy to implement it. Is that something you guys do? Do you help people implement it at
Yeah,
an individual
so my
team level?
company Leverage, which you could go check out getleverage.com. That's what we do. We do
That's what you
training
do.
and consulting for teams.
But
So
what
take
about
like
actually rolling up your sleeves and doing it for them? Like, could I hire you to set me up for a productivity suite and train me to implement it, or do I have to do the implementation?
Well, when you say implementation, like most of it is mostly training. Implementation would be, hey, we've got 500 projects on smart sheets that we need to transfer to Asana and we need to
I see.
optimize the process. Yeah,
Right.
we can do that. We'll charge a lot of money for that type of stuff.
Right.
But for the most part, people get a ton of value just out of the training that we do in all these kind of core tools. But yeah,
Interesting.
we have services that could help, on the lowest end, the most economical is get the book. The book walks you through all this stuff, and you could try to do it yourself.
Right.
Then we have group, which is like done with you, right? And then
Mhm.
we've got like more white glove consulting, which is done for you for the most part. But you can't really. There's no magic wand with this stuff, Mark. Like
Yeah.
it's got to be a collaboration because at the end of the day, like we're not going to sit there and click the button on the
Right.
on Slack to write a message to someone. So
That's right.
there is
And
a
the
component
team's
to
got to have
training.
buy-in, right? And because if
So
only, if one
yeah,
person doesn't use it, the whole system breaks down.
exactly. So you need to be bought in and backing the initiative. You don't
Hmm.
need to be the first person to be setting up the channels or these things, but you need to be bought in and you need to be a participant in the process and
Hmm.
not just be kind of leading by do as I say, not as I do.
Hmm.
Because what you don't want is to introduce a new tool and then half the team's bought in, half isn't, and the ones that are bought in get punished because now they've got to look in not just text or email or Slack, but now they've got to look in another tool,
Right.
and you have to start keeping track of personal preferences. Like, well, I know Mark doesn't like Asana, but he likes Slack. But it's worked hard enough as it is. You can't keep track of personal preferences. So for this
Right.
to really work, people have to be on the same page with that CPR framework, and it's like all or nothing.
Right.
Except email is why why email is such a great starting point. Is that is a single user kind of tool, meaning if you follow the RAD system, reply, archive, defer, and others don't, and you're able to get to inbox zero, you still benefit even if others haven't kind of gotten up to speed with the program
Hmm.
versus the other tools, which are more collaboration tools,
Right.
then so you need buy-in from the top. The change management's the hardest piece of this.
Right.
It's also hard that everyone's drowning in work, so you have to find a little bit of breathing room to give people, because if they're already at full capacity, this is a long-term investment
Right.
where some things take longer than others. But the way I describe it is, if you have a sink that's broken and there's water overflowing onto the floor, like it's quicker probably just to quickly mop it up and then get back to what you're doing
Right.
versus, you spend an hour and you find the hole and you patch the pipe.
Right.
But at some point, if every week you're mopping the floor for, even 5 minutes, after
It adds up.
12 weeks, you're better off, spending the hour to patch the hole. So, it's a trade-off. There's short-term, quick patches versus long-term, foundational shifts that permanently fix an issue that take longer. And depending on where you're at as a business, different things are optimal strategies. If you can't make payroll next month, you can't afford to invest in long-term things like
Right.
you can if you're, just raking in cash. So you have to balance it. But most people are doing 100% short-term, 0% long-term, and
Right.
I would advise against that. At least
Yeah.
if you don't want to invest in it, that's fine. But you have to just be intentional. Like, I am choosing not to invest in this stuff that will be good long-term because we need to tomorrow figure out how to get 10 grand for something,
Right. Right.
right?
Right.
But people need to be thinking about it and being aware. And, at some point, it will be the right time to do things. You don't have to do everything at once. Just do one thing at a time. You don't get benefit if you're trying to roll out 10 things at once suboptimally. So just pick one thing, get it rolled out right, see the benefit, let the
Hmm.
benefit catch up,
Hmm.
give everyone back some breathing room, and then do the next thing.
I love that. Are you agnostic to any type of business operating system for smaller companies? Like I heard you use the term unique ability, which is, Dan Sullivan's kind of not scaling up, strategic coach. And then,
Yeah.
we've used EOS and kind of scaling up models. And I could see how once you have those in place, then you can move on to kind of like these efficiency tools. But does it
I think
matter? Do you have a preference, or does it matter what stage the
I think
company's in?
I think that it no, I don't think matters the stage, and I think that they can all be done in parallel. Like, we're all tackling different things. I think,
Right.
you know, whether it's EOS or scaling up, there's a lot of similarities there, right? At the end
Right.
of the day, they give you a framework. You should have long-term goals. You should have
Right.
short-term goals. You should align your team. You should, make sure that everyone is coordinated.
Right.
So it gives you kind of a framework or a container.
Right.
Um, but likewise, like, I'm teaching you ways to save time and be efficient.
Hmm.
And I'm not trying. I guess the difference is I'm about efficiency and those are about effectiveness. And they're
Yes.
both important. So it's two
They work.
sides to the same coin.
Okay. Yeah, I can see how they work together. That's awesome. Nick, thanks so much for your time. I can't wait to read the book. I wish I had a copy of it before this interview, but it didn't happen.
Well,
This is
all
the way of the
good.
world. But I'm gonna
The
grab
book
it.
just came out literally yesterday, and
Oh, that would explain it. Yeah.
yeah, and you can go and pick up the book, and your audience can go. The book is 320 pages long. It's HarperCollins didn't want us to have it any longer. So
Yeah.
on our website, comeupforair.com, we've got a ton of additional resources that we refer to in the book that's just totally
Yeah.
free. There's calculators, checklists,
Sweet.
PDFs, and that you can go and check out. But this is not a book that's a 10-page blog with repetitive stories around the same
Oh,
concept.
yeah, I
This
can't
is
stand those, by the way.
this
Yeah.
is meaty, dense content that should be read slowly and should be given to your team and should be the employee manual that you never got, that if everyone reads and you have every new hire read, you will be getting 20 to 40% out of every person very quickly, and they'll be much happier in the process too.
Sweet. I look forward to it, and super appreciate the work, and I appreciate your time today, Nick. It was an awesome
Thanks
interview.
for having me.
Yeah. Yeah. Appreciate it, buddy. Hoo-yah.